16th of May 1943. 19 Lancaster bombers, carrying only one bomb each, take off from the RAF Scampton airfield. These 19 planes are about to completely change the course of World War II. But how could just 19 planes, with pilots who didn't know where they were flying until that day, have such a major impact on the war? From the intricate planning to the hair-raising training programs, this is the truly remarkable story of the Dam Busters. This story all begins with this man, Sir Barnes Wallis. Wallis was an engineer who began his career in marine engineering. However, he later transitioned to designing airships, most notably the R-100. In 1930, he shifted once again, this time to aircraft design, where he pioneered a new form of plane construction. This innovation would go on to play a key role in some of the most crucial aircraft of World War II. Wallis had already done a lot, but he was about to have an idea that would change the war. It is believed Wallis may have heard stories about a trick used by Admiral Nelson during the 16th and 17th centuries. Nelson would fire cannonballs so they would bounce along the water before smashing into the hulls of ships. While it's unknown whether these stories are true, Wallis thought he could adapt the idea on a much larger scale. War is raging. Germany's success has been truly shocking. They have swept through most of Europe with astonishing ease. But wars are not won by quick invasions. They are won by infrastructure. Infrastructure provides power, weapons, and war machines, which are all key parts to Hitler's plan. Infrastructure, however, needs power and people to run it. And both need water. The Ruhr Valley in Germany was the heart of Germany's industrial zone. It consisted of a major river system which, due to several dams, was providing Germany with power, food, and water, all needed to keep Germany's war machine running. Soon, Wallis would realise the tactical advantage of busting these dams, and his crazy bomb idea would become a reality. Wallis knew that breaking the Ruhr Valley dams would cut off a massive amount of the valley's power supply, cut Germany's supply of munitions, and flood the valley, destroying much of the surrounding infrastructure. It was the perfect target, and Germany knew it. Germany knew their dams could be a target. They were ready. Each of their dams had multiple anti-aircraft guns, searchlights, and most importantly, torpedo nets. This made submarines useless, and normal bombs weren't nearly accurate enough or powerful enough to destroy the dams. Wallis had considered simply designing a bigger bomb and plane to go with it, powerful enough to breach the massive dams, and in 1940 he commenced testing of this idea in Watford, where they built a 1/50th scale model of the Murner Dam using millions of miniature bricks. This allowed them to calculate the exact explosive power required to breach the dams. Even though it was a good idea on paper, Wallis was having trouble convincing senior officers of the potential. Eventually, in 1941, he gained the support of the MAP's Aerial Attacks Against Dams Committee. It was a good start, but things moved slowly, and at this point, even Wallis had seen the impracticality of designing a whole new plane just for one bomb. But this was where Wallis's bouncing bomb idea could come in useful. Wallis had originally thought he could use it to smash through the hulls of ships, but now he saw its potential use for destroying dams. In 1942, Wallis finally had the plan. To drop a bomb away from the wall so that it would bounce along the water, jump the torpedo nets, and sink right next to the dam wall. This would allow for the bomb to be far smaller than if it were being dropped from a plane right onto the wall. Wallis began testing in his backyard, bouncing marbles across water. Then, in April 1942, he was finally given permission to use the National Physical Laboratory water tanks. Finally, he could really get underway with testing. The plan was for the bomb to spin inside the plane, so when it was dropped, it would already have rotation, allowing the bomb to bounce further. In June through October, Wallace was able to test the idea on a Wellington bomber, proving that the plane wouldn't shake apart from all of the rotation. Then, in December, they were able to have their first drop test of the bomb, codenamed Upkeep, at Chesil Beach. Sadly, the bombs were falling apart on impact, and Wallace was having second thoughts about the spherical shape. Even worse, many seniors from the Air Ministry wanted to stop work on Upkeep and focus on smaller versions or other projects entirely. Fortunately, Wallace kept pushing, and in February 1943, he got the approval of Frederick Lindemann, Winston Churchill's scientific advisor, and so the project was underway. But for any bombing raid, you need a crew. In March 1943, the 617 Squadron was formed. Led by Guy Gibson, the raid, codenamed Operation Chastise, was underway. They began training for a target they knew nothing about. Out of the 133 crew, Gibson was the only one who even knew where they were flying. Nevertheless, training commenced. Germany had built up major security. Their coastline was riddled with radar stations and aerodromes. So, for the pilots to even make it to the dams, they would need to fly at less than 50 meters above the ground. Then, they would need to avoid enemy fire and align themselves perfectly with the dams at night. This all meant that even just the training was extremely dangerous. Yet, their problems were still far from over. Dams are huge. They are built to hold millions of tons of water. And to do this, they need to have really thick walls. Like 30 plus meter thick walls. To explode a dam wall like this, a bomb would need to land perfectly against the wall so it could sink down to the wall's foundation. To do this, the bomb would need to be dropped from the perfect height and distance away from the wall. Otherwise, the bomb could just bounce over the wall or sink too early. But none of the instruments in the plane were nearly accurate enough to do this. That was when they had a brilliant idea. If two spotlights were placed at either end of the plane and they're positioned carefully so they would intersect at the correct drop height, the altitude could be determined easily. This changed everything. This meant that the drop height could be perfected every single time. The only problem now was the drop distance. Once again, an ingenious low-tech solution was found. By getting a triangle with 3 nails in it, the bomber could align each of the nails with his eye and the 2 dam towers. This meant they could ensure the exact distance away from the dam every single time. Finally, all the problems had been overcome and they were ready. 9:28 p.m, 16th of May, 1943. All 19 Lancasters took off. The 133 men are on their way. They decided to split into 2 groups, hoping to confuse the enemy. 5 planes took a longer northern route, while the other 14 flew south. Approaching the Dutch coast, 1 is shot down and 2 are damaged, forcing them to return home. Over the flight, 4 more are either shot or crash. Gibson now has to approach with only 12 bombers left. At 12:28 a.m, they approach the Myrna Dam. Avoiding the fire of the anti-aircraft guns, they one by one line up to drop their bombs. Flying at only 18 meters above the water's surface, they wait till the nails and spotlights are perfectly aligned before dropping their bombs. The first 5 miss, with the bombs either bouncing over the wall or sinking too early. But eventually, to the wall and blows up the dam. The Murder Dam has been breached. At 1:52 AM, they also breached the Eder Dam and then attempt to break the Sawpot, but unfortunately were unsuccessful. Despite this, they had destroyed 2 of their 3 targets. Of the 133 men that flew, 53 died and 3 were taken prisoner. Of the 19 planes, only 11 returned, and most of these men were only 21 or so years old. As well as this, around 1,300 people died as a result of the flooding, and these were mostly civilians. This raid was costly, but what did it achieve? Well, as a result of the major flooding and chaos that ensued, around 20,000 men were deployed to deal with the mass destruction caused by the huge floods. This weakened Germany's main force and cut off one of their biggest industrial areas. The breaking of these dams was a disaster for Germany, but a huge victory for the Allies. Guy Gibson was awarded the Victorian Cross for his efforts, and the 617 Squadron continued to work on more specialised missions. As for Barnes-Wallis, he continued to work in engineering and then was knighted in 1968 before passing away in 1979. The breaching of these dams is a truly inspiring story. If it wasn't for the creativity, ingenuity and bravery of people like Barnes-Wallis and Guy Gibson, the turnout of World War II could have been very different, which is why these people are forever remembered as the Dam Busters.